Dad.
Hey.
Where were you born?
I was born in West London, Hammersmith. And I was born in 1954.
What was going on in West London in the mid-50s? What was the life?
I think it was a delightful place in those days. You know, it was a lot more, a lot slower, a lot more innocent. I mean, I think the whole world was in a way, maybe because communications weren't quite so easy.
In your face.
Yeah, and immediate. But I look back on it. I mean, I don't really remember, of course, the day I was born, but I look back on that era with affection.
Probably you still got some 50s memories in there, right?
Yeah, definitely. I do have memories of. I mean, they're not all pleasant memories. I have memories of feeling very alone, wanting, kind of reaching for something, but nothing quite being there.
So, mom and dad, let's introduce us. Your dad.
My dad was a businessman. He was an advertising executive, and my mum was really an artist and a designer, and she was from Italy, and this is 54, so we're only 9 years after the war. She moved to England very soon after the war. She was married. She had a first marriage she was 17, he was 63. That did not work, and my father came from Manchester. I don't think he was Mancunian, but he was born in Manchester, and I was the second child, so my brother was 3 years and 9 months older than me.
So he's born at the beginning of the decade. You were born 54.
Yeah, he was born, yeah, that's right, 51.
51.
I was 54.
And so West London, you were born, you how many years were you there as a family?
I was born and we were in Wimbledon at that point, and then we lived in London until I was I'd just turned 7, and then I was sent to boarding school. So then I lived in the countryside.
What, boarding school by 8 or something?
My birthday was June, and I went to boarding school in September, so 7.
Oh my God.
7 years. And
so your first 7 years, you were at home going to a local elementary school.
Yeah.
Primary school.
Primary school, yeah.
So, and Big Brother was also there, or was he off? He was shipped off at 7 as well?
Yeah, he was. He was there, but quite distant from me. I never really, when you're 1 and your brother's 4, there's not a lot that you can do together. And he was not, I think he was quite upended by my arrival.
Right.
I know he was upended by my arrival. It's a classic firstborn challenge of losing attention.
He wasn't the center of attention anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm wondering, like, we're there when you're a child, and what do you think were some of the most, and as it speaks to how, the work you're doing today, but what would you say were some of the sort of most impressionable experiences you had within your family dynamic that made you who you are today? Yeah,
I think there are a couple of key cardinal markers there. One of my first memories is we were still living in Wimbledon, and I climbed out of my perambulator, what do you call them? Pushchair now, you call them.
Pram.
And
stroller in America.
And I walked down to my brother's kindergarten school, and I walked into the classroom, and I said, I want my brother back.
You were pushing the pram?
No, I climbed out.
Oh, you climbed out.
I was left in the front garden, and I kind of like got out.
You got out of it?
I was walking, obviously, and I walked down it was not a big tight main road, but 2-lane, but had traffic, and I must have gone probably 200 or 300 yards, because we used to walk down there to school. I'd be pushed in the pram while he was being walked to school. So I kind of obviously knew how to get there. And I walked in the classroom and I said, I want my brother. Can I have my brother back?
Into his classroom?
I walked into his classroom. Yeah, so sweet. No?
You're 2?
Probably 2 and a bit, yeah.
And what was the reaction?
I can't remember. Drama, where's he gone and all of that. I think I can imagine.
Who's the one pushing you, by the way, in the pram? Is it mum? Or?
No, she wasn't very present.
You had a nanny?
We had what they called au pair girls.
Au pair?
Yeah.
Remember her name?
So no.
They
But
came
actually, in the beginning, we did have a nanny, and then we went into the whole au pair, which is like these girls are young, sort of post high school, 17 or 18, and they come over from France or Italy to learn
for
English.
a summer or for a year or whatever.
For 3. Well, not usually that long, but a few months, and then.
But a nanny's more one that's going to stick with you for years, and
nanny's kind of a family member, more of a family member,
right?
But
Mary
they changed
Poppins.
quite frequently. So that was one cardinal point, I would say, of my childhood. And I would associate it a lot with, being the shrimp, being the youngest. I didn't really have a voice. Wasn't, so, Anthony, stop it, kind of thing. So there wasn't a lot. It didn't feel like there was a lot of space for my point of view.
Your viewpoint.
And even my existence, as far as my brother was concerned, because he did things that elder brothers do, but they can also be very damaging,
Right.
So he hurt me a few times physically.
But he was your closest sort of intimate friend in the family. The parents were a bit distant. That's kind of, what was common of that era and post-war London, parents are, it's not like today where they're having reveal parties and they're involved in every detail of their children's activity. There's a little bit more of distance at the time. And it was considered healthy or normal?
Well,
bottle feeding.
To give some sense of context, this is what, 18 years before you were born. I remember when you were born and I lived in England and your mum and I were looking for an apartment. All the advertisements would say no children, no pets.
Even then.
So that's in 1973.
Right.
So we're talking mid-50s.
Children be seen but not heard.
Exactly.
Seen from a distance.
Yeah, children would be seen and not heard. So there was a formality. I would shake hands with my father. He didn't. I wouldn't sit on his lap.
Wow. You shook hands with Dad.
Yeah. And
Did he kneel down to your level, or was he standing upright?
I don't remember him kneeling down. Maybe I do have some flashes around Christmas or something. If I was putting together a train set or something like that he would get a little involved. But he was a very busy man and very benign, very kind man, and very dedicated to his career. And my mum, she must have just had a huge amount to cope with as a vivacious Italian sparkling character who somehow had to
fit into
this English
British
straitjacket.
Yeah. And she's also dealing with that discrimination aspect of being Italian after the war. And so...
Yeah, and I think that was her way of coping with it, was to try become English.
Pretend to be English.
And I think that was her great undoing.
Wow.
In a sense of her whole life, because her parting words to me were, honor your gifts. And I think that's because she realized that she hadn't.
Yeah.
So that was her great sadness, and she wanted to make sure that I would. Of course, I thought that meant play the guitar, write books, draw pictures, that kind of thing. And I think that's an interesting point, because in life we don't, really the biggest gifts we have are so natural to us that we don't recognize them as gifts.
There.
They're just like...
part of us.
Yeah, I was on a call this morning with an editor, and I had someone else on the call because the editor asked me, she said, why are people attracted to you? And I said, I can't really, I can't really answer that question, because there are parts of me that attract attention they're just so normal to me that I can't really give it a shape or a name.
I can't.
Yeah. So,
so we're back at that point where you want your brother back, and that means what to you now? Like that
I think that was my yearning.
For connection.
Yearning for connection, yearning for family, yearning for some point of reference.
And a little bit sort of standing up to the establishment, right? You're walking into a classroom regardless. It's like, I want my brother back.
Plucky.
Plucky.
Yeah, it was plucky.
You still got some pluck, even though you're the number 2 guy. You got some pluckiness.
Yeah. But
even though your brother,
even
if your brother did come back, he probably just to bully you a little bit. But
Do you remember that story? That one time we were driving, because we used to drive to Italy every year because we had to go visit the Italian family, and one time we were driving back. One time we were driving back from Italy, and we'd stopped in Lausanne.
You and me driving back?
No.
Oh, you and your
my
family?
mom and my dad, and I must have been.
So it's
like,
summer vacations in Italy. You drive down from London,
and I'm probably 6 or something like that. And
you're on your way back.
We're on our way back, and we check out of the hotel in Lausanne, and I see the passports, all the 4 family passports on the counter, and I said, "Hey, Mum," and she went, "Anthony, stop it! I'm focused, I'm concentrating." And so I said, "Hey, Dad," and he said, "No, Anthony, don't bother us now. We're checking out, we're paying the bill, and all this." And I kept on saying, "But but yes, and then Anthony, stop it! Get in the back of the car and be quiet. We've got to look at the map and figure out our route." And so eventually I just gave up, and then I think we got as far as Paris or something when they found another hotel, and they went in to check into the hotel, and they didn't have their passports, and that was a big memory for me. It was like speak your voice, say your thing, don't hold back, kind of thing.
Wow.
I remember it was excruciating sitting in the back of the car, every once in a while going, "Yeah, but hey, I really,
That's like the middle child syndrome, I guess. Also the younger child.
Yeah.
So you had to drive all the way back to pick up the passports. What happened?
Yeah, we had to turn around.
And did you close the loop on that and say, "I was trying to tell you this," or did you just stay quiet?
Yeah, but you're not exactly in great favor when you do the "I told you so."
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
To your parents, yeah, just let it go. But that was pretty much what being the youngest child was like.
Wow.
You had you could sort of chip in something, but it was pretty much discounted. And I think that you could call that an extruded form of trauma, if you will. It wasn't by impact, but by repetition. And I think, but actually, it's that and the trauma of going to very old-fashioned boarding schools are what. My way of meeting that eventually was to develop communicative skill. So, and I don't think I would have done it if I hadn't, been compressed that I had to find a way out. So, in retrospect, it wasn't pleasant, but it was useful.
So these are the two. That's interesting. I've never heard. Maybe I heard that I Want My Brother Back years ago, but I don't really remember ever hearing these two big impact.
Yeah, they were pretty big. So life in those days, and then going to boarding school, that was another, to me...
At 7?
Yeah. That was tough. That was tough.
St. Edmunds first?
Yeah, in Surrey, yeah.
And that's basically primary?
7 to 12, yeah.
And then from 13 you went to...
I went to Harrow.
Harrow.
Yeah, best of British.
Did St. Edmunds prepare you for Harrow?
You get to the top of the pile eventually just by virtue of being there for long enough. And I was a sportsman. I was, on all the teams, cricket and football. Soccer.
You found your niche.
Yeah, I was a bit of a rebel, but I and I left early.
British rebel.
I was kind of a year ahead.
Yeah.
So I left early, and then that was the big crash. You're sort of at the top of the school, and then all of a sudden
you're the number. So tell us about the in Harrow there's a uniform and there's a code of there's a dress code, and
there was.
How does that work? What's the uniform in Harrow?
You would wear in those days. This would have been now 1967. We were still mourning Queen Victoria, who died in 1903. So we had to wear a black tie. That was the first thing.
How long is that
black ties.
Supposed to go on for? 70 years mourning?
I don't know if they still do it today. I think maybe they still do it today.
Oh, God.
And as young boys, we had for daytime, for weekdays.
Weekday wear.
Weekday wear, we had a blue blazer and grey shorts when you're a youngster.
Yeah.
And socks and black shoes and all that.
Tie?
And a tie, black tie.
Stripe, black tie. Black tie because morning.
Yeah. And a white shirt. And then we would, and on Sundays, then we would get into like dinner wear, like you'd see in the 20s or something like that. So a tailcoat, wing collar, stiff wing collar, bow tie.
Tails.
tails.
For dinner?
Yeah, and we always had hats. We had a boater. And the boater it's like Fred Astaire, you know, when you're dancing.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And
not a top hat, a boater.
No, boater. You had a top hat if you were a monitor, if you were a senior.
I see.
And the boater we were taught to wear at an angle like this. And the reason...
45 degrees down the
not
angle
quite
of your
45,
nose.
But yeah, so you would kind of keep this line of your nose more or less level with the ground. You notice the royal family does that, right?
So you have, by wearing the rim of the hat in your eye line,
you'd have to raise it to
your
walk.
nose up.
So you would learn to walk with your nose in the air.
Stretch out your neck muscles.
Yeah.
Look down your nostrils at people.
Well, look down at life, Look down at, you know.
Wow. Did that impact, how did all of that formality, because you don't seem to be, you know, we're in the 60s we're talking here. It was quite different from...
Yeah, well, 1968 was the revolution in France at the Sorbonne. 1964 was Grateful Dead and the whole electric Kool-Aid acid test thing happening in California. The whole hippie movement was happening in California. This was 67.
Right.
So I was a little bit behind that wave and busting at the seams to...
Get out.
Yeah.
So this is what led to your motorcycle trips around Europe?
Yeah. I had my first motorcycle. I saved up money. I had my first motorcycle 2 years before I had a license, and it was left at a friend's house, and I would go there on holidays and go look at it.
By the way, what bike? What model?
A Honda 50 Super Sport.
Mm-hmm. Color?
Black and silver, chrome.
It had a bit of class.
It was a classy bike.
You've always had an eye for classy things, right?
Well, I have an aesthetic eye. You know, I like to look at things that are beautiful. Yeah.
So you think you get that from your mum?
Yeah, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And my dad, he was a dapper.
He was dapper.
Very, very...
He was organized, orderly, dapper.
Yeah.
But mom was creative. She was the Italian creative flair.
Yeah.
This episode of the Peace Starts With Me podcast is brought to you by our merch store. Check it out at peacestartswithme.com/collections. We have apparel and accessories for the whole family, including backpacks, pins, aprons, shirts, baby onesies and bibs, and more. Show your support and go to peacestartswithme.com/collections.
What would you say, just jumping the gun straight to today for a taster, what would you say, what are you most excited about in your work today? And, you know, your breath work, this is what you've been working on with a community, building awareness, a practice.
I'll start with what frustrates me. Because,
okay, great.
What I've
what
found
irritates you?
Yeah, well, people for a long time people say, "What do you do?" And it's such a difficult thing to explain when you use this word breathwork, which in itself is a huge word. Nobody hasn't, unless you've studied it, you wouldn't understand how many different layers and textures and nuances there are in that one word. But I used to say, well, look, if I had a miracle in my pocket, would you want me to share it with you? That was how I would somehow give it some import, because it is so important and we've forgotten. But then more recently, I would just say, well, I teach people how to breathe. And then I find since then, people come to me and they say, oh, it's time to take a breath now, huh? And I find myself actually getting a little bit frustrated when I hear that.
Why?
Because it to me is an example of exactly how we take it for granted. Because the breath, to me, is the source of life, and is also the source of spirit. It's the biggest thing that could possibly happen to us on this planet, in this earthly existence. It's God, to me. It's the power of spirit. And we've spent so much of our lives not being aware of it, and then this curious paradox of referring to it and making a cliche out of it. But in a way, we use it as a cliche almost to distance ourselves from the immense power that it has.
Interesting. So that's what you find is
I find that frustrating. I think and actually for me, I do teach people how they can use their breath. That's true. But really what's underneath that is my wish for people to love themselves unconditionally, and because I can identify. I didn't really love myself as a kid. I thought I was like the one that didn't belong. I was the outsider,
not worthy,
the outcast. I was half Italian at school.
The
I was
tag-along.
I was called all kinds of greasy wop names, and spaghetti was about the nicest of them. And people were unkind. And then as I navigated through my life to maturity, it was a messy journey. It wasn't like summa cum laude and, everything was roses at all. I had to clamber back from this displaced life of not belonging into some kind of accomplishment so I could feel worthy. And I think that I was, I wasn't as scrupulous as I would be today. I was kind of smash and grab. I've got to get ahead. I've got
right.
And very confused about what a human relationship would look like with women. Hence, you were born when I was 18 years old. So really trying to understand, not very well equipped. I could do the snob thing quite well, but other than that, which I was trained to do at school, but other than that, I couldn't. I found myself feeling for the underdog, for the person at the other end of the nose is who I identified with more than the person who was looking down their nose. So,
as a person, right?
Yeah,
you could play that role, but actually your own experience.
But I found it distasteful.
Would you help me understand or just recap? So. Actually, first, let's just give for context what we mean when we say breathwork, because everybody's breathing if they're alive. But when we say breathwork, how would you describe that? We can get into it in more depth later, but how do you describe that in a sentence as to what does that mean?
Well, I would say breathwork is a doorway to gaining intimacy with what the breath means and all the myriad of ways that it affects us if we control it and we change it, and the myriad of ways that it shows us what kind of state we're in, from physiological to psychological to spiritual. And then the further chapters after you've opened that doorway, the other doorways in that corridor are really about, well, what does that mean? What does it actually mean to be living in such a dense physical form that I can see these things? And, even though we're 95% space or something in our body, we actually can see each other. So what is it like to live in this mundane material reality and to be breathing in something so subtle? I would call it the height of awareness. You can't see it. You can only see what it does. You can only feel what it does. And then the paradox of us calling it our breath, but it's not ours at all. We've got to give everyone back. We can only borrow it. So then we begin to get down the corridors and start to get into more of the specifics and the specialized aspects of the breath. But just in simple terms, to take that which is most high and to bring it into that which is most low is what I see with people that I work with, is that it opens a connection. And one of the best ways I can explain it is to imagine a piece of string, and we'll call that the continuum, and we'll put at one end of the continuum our human density and the ways we think, and like the Buddhists say, 60,000 thoughts a day in this monkey mind of mine. And then at the other end of this piece of string, we'll put that which is most subtle. We could call it the God of your understanding or spirit or whatever you might want to call it. And these things are pretty opposite. The earthly world doesn't really invite us to consider spiritual things. And likewise, if we're really devout and engaged with our spirit, navigating in a harsh world can be quite difficult too. And so what I see is when people practice breathwork consciously, that these two ends of string are taken and they're joined together. And there's this, all of a sudden, there's a circuitry that's happening, that's flowing. And I get goosebumps just talking about this. It creates instant shift. It's like there's been so much data waiting to flow for so long, and all of a sudden it's the marriage between all that's physical and all that is spiritual. And then there's a whole new conversation that can begin. There's
It's
a whole new
experienced
language.
when you're doing it, it's experienced what might be compared to a meditation, but you're having both a physical, an excited physical, physical breath. It's stimulating physically, but you're also accessing your inner mind, your spirituality, and your things are occurring to you. Things are loosening up. You're having this kind of, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's never done it before.
Yeah. Well, physiologically, you're absolutely right, first of all. And physiologically, what we're doing when we breathe what they call a conscious connected breath, which is a breath without gaps. So you're always
right,
like that, is that we increase the oxygen supply in the bloodstream, but we actually decrease the oxygen flow to the frontal lobe. And so we actually begin to think less. And then
that's just the physiological
that's physiological
result of continued breath. Less
correct.
Oxygen goes to the frontal lobe. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We
get more oxygen in the blood, but it doesn't get released into the system. It gets released into different parts of the system in different ways. And some of those ways, one way to get it into the frontal lobe is to actually hold your breath and allow the carbon dioxide levels in the blood to rearrange themselves so it can be released into your brain. So this whole aspect, okay, because we live with our frontal lobe, right?
Is that because it favors this first? And so when you're pumping oxygen into the rest of your body, it changes the proportion of oxygen in your frontal lobe in comparison to the rest of your body?
Basically, yes. I mean, on the cellular level, I believe you're still getting
the same amount of oxygen.
You're still getting oxygen. You're getting more oxygen in your bloodstream, and I believe more oxygen in some of your cells. But what we know is in the frontal lobe that it gets actually less during this process. And when you think of the way that we live, we calculate everything is happening up here.
We're driving, flying forward.
Unless we're terrorized or traumatized, and then we go back to the fight or flight, which is the amygdala in the back of the brain. So what we're doing in this situation is consciously organizing a moment where we're slowing down the monkey mind and the thoughts, and then this is where something magical
new can
happens. Because we know that to inspire comes from the word inward and spirit.
So for the non-Latin based language speakers, do you want to tell us what inspiration means?
Inspiration means to inspire, means to bring in spirit inwards. And that's why when we die, we expire. The spirit leaves us.
And how do you say breathe in Italian, for example?
You actually say ispirare. I always want to say inspirare, but it's actually ispirare. Ispirare and espirare.
So the same root or not?
Yeah, exactly the same one. In fact, spirit in the word breath, even in ancient Hawaiian, the ha of Hawaii means breath. Haole, which is what the Hawaiians call non-islanders, means people without breath. As we get inspired, then, well, what is it? If it's not the frontal lobe and if it's not the amygdala and we're not in survival mode, then what is happening? And so to me, the fascination for me has always been that, because I've studied some psychology and I'm also a very spiritually needy human being. I always have been. I've always wanted more spirituality in my life. And I just have this image of the psychological world, for all its intelligence and all its effort, trying to build a ladder to arrive at some spiritual awareness. And even Carl Jung, when you read his Red Book, which is a fascinating document, is fraught with anxiety and frustration and anger. And, it's not an easy, this is not an easy connection to make. And I think historically we've
trying to
made
think
it too
our
complicated.
way to a divine experience.
Exactly, yeah. So that's why this magical slowing down the thoughts allows our cup to be filled with something different. And then we enter the quantum possibility.
You're entering into a realm that's happening with you, around you, in you, but not at your control or not because of you. There's an X factor you're experiencing now, where you feel a divine presence.
Absolutely. You invite a divine presence, and it's not through. It's less successful if you need a result.
Right.
If you've got an expectation, it's less likely to occur. If you can show up in your nakedness and your innocence,
to surrender.
Then you're more able to. But
right.
And that's a journey, because a lot of us don't want to. We don't believe we deserve illumination.
So this go back to the point for you that's personal, like you mentioned, a point of irritation. What frustrates you?
Because we reduce it down to a cliche.
Right.
That I guess it's time to breathe now, huh?
Right. So you're actually trying to bring awareness to a thing that's just limitless and expansive and ever present. And now it's got a name and a box and a brand, and then people associate you with that thing. It's like they see you, I guess now I can breathe. Like,
we
Anthony's
were speaking last night about the need to define, the human need to define. The human need to create form, and the human need to define. When something is actually perfectly fine, we need to define
without
it.
definition.
Just exactly. Yeah,
perfectly fine without defining it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just define.
Yeah.
So then, but you expressed it as a form of love, self-love also.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like belonging in worthiness.
What would you have done after the first attempt to get your mother's attention with the passports? You're sitting in the back of the seat. How could you imagine it having been different if in that moment you were aware of your breath?
I think I would have been perfectly at peace. I'm just riding in the back of the car. It's a beautiful view, and apart from the fact they're probably smoking up front and all the windows are closed like they used to do in those days. But
smoke with the windows closed.
Yeah, that's a metaphor for a few things, I'd imagine. Yeah.
No AC too, maybe, right?
No AC, no.
Beautiful drive, though.
It's a beautiful drive.
A blessing to be with a family driving through Europe.
Oh, we would play some game. It was for me.
Highlights of the year.
It was great because we were close as a family.
You were forced to be spending time together.
Yeah.
What kind of road games did you play?
I Spy with my little eye, and then count different colors, and who can see the first Austin or whatever car it was, or things like that. Those were fun times. Now you just get on, you open your app and you go to booking.com and you just take, if you're in a hurry, you just take something and you get off the freeway and you book it and you're done.
Right,
but
there.
I remember some evenings where they would have to, they'd stop at 7 or 8 hotels to find a room which would take 2 adults and 2 children. It was, sometimes it would take 2 hours to find a hotel. It wasn't easy in those days.
I was, it's funny, the other day I was looking for a way to explain a relationship, sort of a child's perspective of a parent's burden or a parent's reality from the perspective of the child in the back seat versus the child in the front seat. And because we all have those memories of being in the back seat and are we there yet? And, the passenger that asks, are we there yet, is clearly not in a relationship of any kind of ownership over the trip, right? Because you know where you are. But I remember having those experiences. But then there's also the experience we had driving. I think it was the Mercedes truck, the 4x4 forestry vehicle. When you lost the clutch.
That's right. We drove it all the way, didn't we?
We drove from Italy, I guess it was where? Tuscany or Umbria at the time.
Yeah.
All the way to London.
Yeah.
Without a clutch. So that's a stick shift for those that don't know what a clutch is. That's a stick shift manual. And I remember it was just you and me in the car. And I was remembering this it came to mind when I was trying to explain the difference when as a child you're aware of your parents' burden and you're kind of rooting, you're rooting for them, you're in it. You might not have your hand on the wheel, but you're in it. You understand what's going on. And I remember, we're trying to get all the way from, because you can switch gears, for those that don't know, you can switch gears from 2 to 3, 3 to 4 quite easily, very easily once you're moving. But to go from a standstill to first gear without a clutch to put it into gear, it's impossible. And to go to first to second is pretty tough. So how do you drive all the way across Europe without stopping the car, or without ever stopping the car on the flat or uphill? Yeah. And I remember those moments where, we have to get off the highway.
Yeah. Is the light going to change? Is the light going to change?
Right. It's probably like 1,000 yards out, and we've got to stop for gas. We've got to stop for lunch or something. Flat road, big, nice, wide French road. The light's 1,000 yards away, and you're trying to time it so that you can get the green light. And I use that as an analogy of just that bond of parent-child, where the child isn't just waiting for it to happen in the back seat. Are we there yet? But like, you're up there with the parent. You're rooting for them. You understand the stakes.
Isn't that curious? Because you were talking about the firstborn and the secondborn and so on the other day, and the secondborn would be in the back seat, of course, which is where I grew up. And what's significant to me about this as a metaphor today is that if we don't make a conscious effort, we still stay in the back seat. And so a question for me is, what does it take for us as adults to come to terms with ourselves so we can consciously climb up front and take the wheel and become more causal, become more co-creative in our lives?
We've both been on a journey of discovery, ultimately looking for the same thing, and having both simultaneously, both like almost identical experiences and opposite experiences at the same time, from depending on which way you slice it.
Well, I think
what comes up for you?
I think that there's been a thread that is weaving, it's a loose thread. There's a lot of it. And in some way it's taking my experiences and it's getting the needle through those, and it's getting your experiences and it's getting the needle through those. And they're not necessarily on the same timeline. They're kind of all very varied and very different, and something's converging.
Right.
And so in a summary, it feels like there's going to be a moment when that thread is, like when you're sewing, every once in a while you pull it tight, and it just feels like it's going to get pulled tight, and everything is going to go boom.
Right, I know what you mean.
And then it's like almost an unlimited power, almost something.
Yeah, we're both feeling this, some convergence.
Yeah, and I'm here to say, how can I help? That's
right.
Which is very different than what I used to feel about you.
This episode of the Peace Starts With Me podcast is brought to you by our merch store. Check it out at peacestartswithme.com/collections. We have apparel and accessories for the whole family, including backpacks, pins, aprons, shirts, baby onesies and bibs, and more. Show your support and go to peacestartswithme.com/collections.
Well, the nutshell story is... What's the nutshell story? I'm tired of hearing myself try to compress it in 10 seconds. In terms of this convergence, it
was very hard for me to accept what your choices were after we had the ayahuasca experiences. And I didn't understand what you were saying when we were in Brazil together in the Amazon, in the jungle. And these are all metaphors because it was a real jungle of for each of us in our own personal journey.
What year are we now?
1993, 1994. This is your 21st.
So we're living in
your 21st
Umbria.
Birthday.
We're living in Umbria, Italy. I'm not 21. I'm 19. Yeah, I'm 19.
Okay. Well, I had it in my mind. Maybe I did it for your 18th. For me, it was a rite of passage. This whole thing was to take you on this extraordinary
I felt
journey.
like I was it just wasn't the rite of passage you were looking for.
Wasn't what either of us expected.
Either of us expected. But just for context, because I'm 19, you're what? You're 40, 39, 30.
Well, if you're 19, I'm 37.
37.
Yeah. So 2 years, 18.
So there's so many experiences we've had as father, son, and a lot as brothers, although I've never tried to make it. I've never tried to leverage. It's not like people take us as brothers, or we have just common experiences that some people perceive as like a brother kind of energy. But I've always respected the fact that it's a father-son relationship.
Yeah.
And you also have been a very, very open and, supportive, not a domineering or controlling father, right? So neither of us have leveraged or played around with we've been just kind of close. Yeah. Okay, we've been close, and we've been through so many different experiences. Yeah. And I'm 19, we're living in Italy. Can't even remember what I was doing. I guess I was working a little bit on a building site or whatever.
And you were quite involved in your music?
Involved in music. And we did yoga, right? We were studying yoga under Danny Paradise.
That's right. That's what took us to Brazil. He invited us to Brazil.
Danny Paradise shows up. He's this guy he's just backpacking a guitar guy, and he raises enough money with a couple of gigs and a few, yoga sessions to buy his next plane ticket around the world. And by that time, he had developed a circuit. Right. And he comes to see you in Italy. He spends a week or two with us in Italy. And he's with his girlfriend. But he starts talking about his Brazil circuit and how he has met these people with the União de Vegetal.
The Union of the Vegetable.
The Union of the Vegetable. It's a Christian-based, Catholic-based sort of spiritualist group that they're quite traditional, and yet very, very traditional, family-oriented, living all throughout Brazil, and they take maybe once a month or twice a month the ayahuasca, this blend, specially prepared blend of Amazonian leaves, different bushes and twigs and
different plants. Yeah.
Danny tells us about this story.
Yeah.
And
he says it's like dying.
And I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
And and then he was inviting us to come with him. Yeah. Was it that year?
The year following.
The next year.
Because we went in February.
Okay. So we're up this old stone house in Umbria, Italy, and I'm listening to this yogi. Really, he's speaking to you, but I'm the tag-along guy, right? Speaking about his experiences in Brazil. What were your, when you're hearing him say, you take it to die? What were you thinking?
So I received the call.
You're intrigued.
And and this, remember, this is like 20 years after my experience with the Unification Church,
right?
Which had cauterized my relationship with my spirituality. I was so deeply traumatized after that I Danny was really one of the people that helped me heal that. He was he introduced me to Jiddu Krishnamurti.
Yep.
And so I used to go listen to him talk at Brockwood Park.
I came with you a couple of times.
I think so, yeah. And
I enjoyed those sessions.
And indeed, Alfie, your youngest brother, went to that school as a teenager himself. Yep. So that opened the pathway to my healing. So I had a very high regard for
Danny and anything he was. So for you, it was part of your evolving sort of spirit. It made sense. It was something you felt ready for.
Yeah, I mean, how
perception.
How old was I? I was 36, 37.
Yeah, 37.
So I think it was the first time that I'd contemplated my death. Because when someone says to you, "You take this to die," you're in your pre-death moment. You're seeing your whole life flash before you, and you're taking stock.
It's a psychotropic, right? Yeah. It's a psychotropic tea. It tastes awful. And he's describing all of this. And when I'm hearing it, I'm imagining some of those movies you see or cartoons you see, those images of people taking something and then having an out of body, they can fly across whatever. But when, just as a father, it may have been different for you. When you were hearing this and you were contemplating coming along with me, there's one thing about how you felt about your journey. What was your initial thought, even before we left, about bringing me along? Was there any fear there, or?
It was a huge. Well, first of all, it wasn't that you would have to drink the ayahuasca. You could have just come and done the yoga classes. And
oh, really? You thought that might be what would happen?
That maybe that's what would happen.
Is that what you
nonetheless, wanted? I think I realized it was a huge moment. It was a big risk. It was a big risk moment for me. A moment for me to introduce my son to it, without having had the experience myself was, enormous.
I don't think I ever really fully appreciated that because I've never really looked at it. I have, but I haven't looked at it from the father's perspective, because when I heard you drink this tea to die, I went to die. But I didn't go to die having to have any concern over someone in my care. I had that some layer of protection covering, the Uncle Danny, dad and elders, like it in that sense, kind of nothing to lose. Whereas I can imagine if I was taking my son, I would be concerned about that. And I don't know if I ever really appreciated that fully. But see, because I went there to die, and one of the first memories I have of our trip is sitting next to you on the airplane. I think we flew to the States, and then we had to go down to Miami. We took a couple of extra days to sort out visas because we were traveling on our American passport. I was traveling on an American passport, not my British one, which requires a visa for entry in Brazil at that time.
I don't remember that.
There was a couple of days we spent in Miami. I think I tried to, it was a couple of days in Miami. But I think it was that flight, the last leg we started in Rio. So it was a flight from Miami to Rio. On that flight, I remember sitting next to you, and I remember watching you read the travel book. You're reading the travel book to Brazil, and you're reading about mosquitoes and the various risks. And you were getting all like your mother. You were being like your mother about it, probably. Like I think some of that Italian mom energy. You're becoming neurotic about the trip, and you were worried about mosquitoes. And I remember looking at you, and honestly, I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you, but that's where that whole trajectory that we kind of went on, where we had like these like very, different experiences of what each other was going through on this trip. For context, guys, we're talking about a 3-week trip to Brazil to meet the União do Vegetal, who usually take this tea ceremoniously for a 1-hour session on a Saturday. 4-hour session.
4-hour session.
Every other Saturday.
That's right.
As a part of a religious ceremony.
Yeah.
But we didn't just stay with one community. We went from Rio to Manaus, from Manaus to, we visited about 7 different communities, and being hospitable as they are in each place
each
we
time
landed,
you arrived, there'd be a ceremony.
There'd be another ceremony. So we were up to, within 3 weeks, we were already up to like 6 months supply of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so just for context.
It was the fast track.
It was the fast track. But prior to all of this, you're there worrying about, death by mosquito. And I remember going there committed to die, like not in some weird...
Well, I think we need to put that into context a bit, because there might be someone listening saying, is this like a suicide pill?
No, there's no suicide pill. It's like you can't, you have to be willing to face whatever it is in your psyche or in your imagination or in your spirit world that has a hold on you. Yeah. And I felt like I'm diving in the deep end with it. I didn't go intending to physically die, but that wasn't off the table either. It was like whatever it would take, I'm just diving in the deep end. I had already experienced...
But your spiritual search was already quite profound, wasn't it? Because you were reading those
I was searching. I was searching, and I was supported by you to search. I was protected, you could say, by not being brought up in a formalized, pre-structured journey. My journey was I could go in any direction.
It was religious, but it was spiritually
right.
alert.
You created an environment where that was okay. As long as it wasn't the Unification Church, right? That was okay. And so, but I don't know if I ever shared with you that moment, because it's a visual impressed in my mind. That's watching you getting, you're just having a moment of neurosis, forget the tea.
That's
I might
not true,
die.
Damien. I don't remember that.
We're talking about the Amazon River. We're talking about piranhas.
Yeah, it's where you can't pee in the river. You can't even pee in the river.
You can't pee in the river. The parasites.
Because the parasites will climb up your urine.
Up your willy.
Yeah.
You and me, the same two guys that I think a few years earlier drove down to Sicily in
Naples. Yeah.
Right, we go down to Naples, we get the car on the boat to drive around Sicily, and all we can imagine is, mafia with guns hiding behind every wall. And you and me, the same two guys, in that very beach in Miami before flying down, we're wading out into the water, and all you can think about is the sharks, and we're both trolling each other. Did you see something? No, we got to go back in, so we're like totally neurotic about, the physical dangers in these types of circumstances. But here we are going to Brazil. Neither of us had ever been to South America. And we're not just going to a nice hotel in Rio or Sao Paulo. We're going into the jungle. Guys, we went plane by plane by plane by whatever the final, if you can even call it a plane, our final trip out to Cruzeiro do Sul.
That's right.
Cross of the Sun.
Southern Cross. Yeah.
It was the westernmost tip of Brazil. You're literally a walk away from Machu Picchu if you have the energy.
Yeah, the deepest
in Peru,
Amazon. Yeah.
Right? The deepest Amazon. Danny's taking us on this trip. We're now out it was a leper colony, right? 50% of the people in this town were not only leprous, but visibly so, and some kind of government medication program, whatever.
And wasn't that what St. Damien?
Is it what St. Damien?
St. Damien tended to the lepers, I think.
So from the very first, when you take this tea, you're encouraged to express after you come, after your meditation, you're encouraged to vocalize, and people come to you and ask you a question. My first impression of the question that was coming to me was similar to how you may have felt when people say, "Oh, Anthony, it's time to breathe." The question itself would have made the answer banal and would have made the experience banal. Because my experience with the tea was I was drinking it to die. I don't think I ever threw up, maybe once, because it triggers, usually you vomit within 20 minutes. But similar to how I had sometimes been able to train myself to breathe through a roller coaster trip or breathe through car nausea or something like this, I went kind of through the pain, and what I experienced was just like, I wasn't having visions of all kinds of crazy things and hearing voices and all kinds of, my feeling was just, I went into such a deep experience of presence that there was nothing to be said. And then people, so how was your experience? Are you okay? It's like, I felt like I was having a different experience from everyone. And...
Well, you were.
I was. And just, it probably looked different from the outside and different from the inside, but I never came down from this stuff. I think it was by session 15 that somebody realized maybe Damien's had enough.
Stop giving it to him. Because their belief system was that you needed more.
Well, once they realized... They gave me enough of that. They got me started on the 9 vegetable.
The Nova vegetable.
That's kind of like a little bit more advanced from a certain point of view. But back to the leper colony, do you know, I was walking into people's homes. I remember walking into someone's home. Like I felt, you talk about Christ consciousness, or you talk about like just the presence of just, I was convinced that human beings have the power to love our way to healing. Love our way, sort of a presence, a love, a breath, a hand, a oneness, a willingness to die, a willingness to, I remember going into a home uninvited. We're talking about, I don't speak Portuguese. I walked into some home. There's a humble home somewhere down the road from where we were staying. Because I used to go on walkabouts. I don't imagine what you were going through. I walked into this home. There was a TV playing, a couple of kids sitting on the floor, and a grandmother on the couch, clearly a leper, very deformed. Her hand was really ugly and deformed. And I just remember sitting down. I walked in with sort of a total, this is as much my home as yours. Like there was no like, hello, I wasn't playing to formality. I wasn't playing to custom. You'll remember, I was just sort of in whatever element I was in. And I walked in and I sat down next to this grandmother and took her hand and held her hand, and I just smiled at her, and I was just kind of feeling a prayer of like, even if I could take some of the leprosy from you and share some health with you. I wasn't thinking it through, but that was perhaps a way to describe the kind of heart with which I just want, I climbed up to the top of the water tower and just wished, I had this prayer, let everyone be healed, please. I was just like this very innocent type of. Anyway, these are just some of the experiences I was having, many, 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 many deep, deep experiences. But for me, it was more about just being in the moment. And definitely this was a rite of passage, because in our father-son relationship, which, Dad, I depended on for my survival. I didn't have a mother. I didn't have consistent friend groups because we were always moving around. I didn't have a church community or some other kind of. I had grandparents, and then they started dying. So I was never willing to risk, I never wanted to risk our relationship. Actually, that was probably scarier than the idea of dying. And so that I realized coming back from Brazil, that was a point at which, even though maybe you had suggested it's time to go and meet your mother, that you said that, Damien, I think it's time for you to go to meet your mother. But in a sense, that may have been, I don't know what I can do with you anymore. I don't know. But that's what I was mentioning to you last night when we came back to Italy. And I don't think I slept for 3 months, but I remember thinking, if I do go and see Renee, if I do go and meet the church, this whole history that I had.
Well, she actually came to see us.
She did.
In Italy on our return. And from the other perspective, I won't go into all the
just to
detail,
finish that, and then you can go back. But I came back to Italy with a desire to get back to the point at which you would send me off to meet my mom, but not in that broken, division, where we weren't even really communicating. But I wanted to get your blessing to go. Yeah. But your experience, of course, different.
Well, I thought I'd just killed my son.
Yeah.
That's what I considered. I remember sitting in a dusty street, on the sidewalk with my head in my hands, crying, and
what have I done?
What have I done? How could I have exposed my son to this? Because from the outside, you'd departed and you were being judged as in the middle of a psychosis. And
right.
Even Danny was saying to me, what are you going to do about Damien? I was like...
Wait, you invited me? He was kind of your spiritual guide.
He was definitely a mentor. And there was another guy there. I can't remember his name, but he had a chain of restaurants in San Francisco.
Michael or...
Bobby.
The totally different energy, right? The sort of American,
very, very
American
worried,
grind.
Yeah, fast-paced,
Jewish.
Worried, possibly. And he was saying, we've got to get him in hospital. You've got to put him in hospital. I'm like, trying to
medication.
Protect you, trying to stop, trying to figure out what's going on.
The Yunyao is saying he just needs another cup of tea.
Yeah, so they're saying that. Danny's embarrassed.
Yeah.
And you were under lock and key. They closed the gates.
The gates to the facility,
the compound,
right?
kind of thing. And those,
that was probably a good idea. I remember getting scared
because
climbing
you used
that
to wander
water
off.
tower.
You'd keep wandering off, and they were concerned that someone would get upset with you, and the law is the knife kind of thing in the jungle. So that's what the concern was, is that you'd get into some difficulty you couldn't resolve.
It was quite possible.
Yeah.
I was walking into people's homes. I remember not doing anything, I remember having no impulse to do anything crazy from the perspective of harm or hurt or theft or.
And you were also singing. You had a guitar and you were singing lyrics, and that's how you were communicating, because you weren't talking. You weren't able to be in a conversation with me. That's what was so scary. And
but you've had those experiences where when you're in a conversation but you can't relate, and it's like there's nothing you can say.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's so.
But it seemed from the outside, it just seemed psychotic and incoherent.
I get it.
It was but in your lyrics, it was like you'd speak every third sentence. And I began to figure that out, and I began to listen to the lyrics, and it was very cryptic, like, enough to make you wonder about a crossword puzzle. It's kind of what you were presenting. And I remember the first time that we drank this tea, and we were sitting next to each other. Mm-hmm. I think it was the last time we sat next to each other, because I think after that they said you shouldn't sit next to people you know.
Interesting.
And I looked at our hand, my hand, I was to your left, and my hand was here and your hand was there. Mm-hmm. We were on these kind of recliners. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Like, it was a very still experience. Mm-hmm. Some of these groups, when they drink this stuff,
they dance
all the time and chant, but we were just very still. Mm-hmm. And I looked down, and I, first of all, could see everything that was going on underneath the skin in both of our hands. I could see the muscles, tissues, and everything. It was just so.
That I had that in the first 5 minutes, the first tea. From that first time I had that experience, and I just went into a zone from that point. And then you said you looked at me and saw every face of the family or something.
Oh, I don't remember. Okay. Very possibly, but I don't remember now. But I do remember looking at
our
hands next to each other, and this kind of chain between them,
blood
dissolving.
Oh, interesting. A chain.
Like a chain, like a link.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like a heavy chain. It was like a connection that was dissolving. And it was, to me, that's what this journey was about. After that, it was like, okay, there's a part of him that needs to exist without being linked to me. There's a part of him that needs to be born in his own right.
Right.
Not. Right. And so, to come back full circle, just for people who are listening, to put something into context about this death, I think what Danny was referring to, and what my understanding of it is, with all these, 40 years of retrospect or 30 years of retrospect, is that it's the death of all lies and of all artifice and all of the ways that we arrange to live around each other to keep things copacetic, kind of thing. And it was the death of that persona. Because for me, as a young man, as a young 22-year-old who was a single parent, 21-year-old, I received projections and reactions from people that were like, wow, you're amazing. Look what you're doing.
People treat you differently with the sun in tow. They would treat me with
huge respect because I'd undertaken this.
It's a rare thing.
I think it was the first time ever in America that custody had been given to the father.
You're kidding.
No. I think this was,
Really?
Yeah.
Because of this Unification Church case?
This was a precedent case.
You're kidding.
Yeah. No,
you're
kidding.
No, you're kidding.
I don't think
Googleable.
I am.
Somebody Google that.
Well, let's Google it to find out. But that's what my lawyer told me. He did tell me, and he did charge me a lot of money too. So maybe he was justifying his
salary.
Bill. But it was.
It was totally unique, and
so what happened in these relationships that I lived with sort of a guaranteed level of accolade. Oh, you're a single parent. Wow, that's amazing.
Oh, you got a dog too? Wow, gorgeous family.
Yeah, and then sometimes I'd find myself in my shyness,
right?
That I'd kind of found it convenient for people to know that I was a single parent. Right. This became a persona, a hero persona that I could wear that would gain me access
Sure.
to something that I feared I might not get
Absolutely.
otherwise. And that, I mean, this is not in my conscious mind, of course.
No,
This
I
is
get
just
it.
my subconscious trying to figure out a coping system of how to deal with life.
I get it.
You know, but that's how it played out at the time. Yeah. So
I get
this experience in Brazil was the dismantling, the
For
taking
you.
off of the mantle of this persona, and so a step towards less lies,
really a big
more truthfulness.
right.
Yeah.
Which I think
I can't tell you the psychological, the pain and the guilt and all of those, the fear that I had during this process was enormous.
But what a cool dad to bring your son, as honestly and as admittedly fearful of the mosquito bites as you may have been. That whole thing was...
Well, that's not my narrative, but it's not my memory either. But
no,
I'm not sure how beautiful it is. I wouldn't advise a father to do that.
No, you wouldn't.
Honestly.
We're not advising. But I said cool. I didn't say beautiful. I said cool. But I can't imagine doing that with a son. Wow. It's one thing to be willing to go and dive in the deep end yourself, but to kind of have a baby on your shoulders and hope that they live.
Well, I would not recommend it to anybody. And at the same time, I see a lot of people doing that today, and with enormous courage, in the hope of creating change. And it's definitely going into the fire. It's definitely going into that cave that you fear most. So there's something, and I'm encouraged by what I see happening today, that people are willing to do that.
So
in their own way. It doesn't have to be around.
Yeah.
I mean, I see people doing it with breathwork.
Stepping out of their comfort zones and
Yeah, exactly. And I think every breathwork journey I facilitate is that, leaving the known world and greeting the unknown, and then what awareness do we bring back afterwards?
So, do you want to talk at all about last couple of minutes? What would you like to talk? Would you like to talk about something exciting that you're working on, or would you like to?
You were 2 minutes.
You got 1 minute. You answered
60
before
seconds.
what frustrated you.
Yeah, what excites me is that I think that we're at a moment of enormous change, and
in the world,
and an enormous unsustainability that's evident, and it's not comfortable.
Yeah,
but it's like being in a birth canal, and that brings trepidation and apprehension, and there'll be some surrender and some will applied in different ways. And I believe that there's great hope. I'm not sure how that manifests in the physical world, but I believe in the spiritual world that there are legions more people becoming aware that spirituality is really where the truth exists, and this worldly existence we have is really a distraction if we're not very conscious. So, if I had a call to action, it would be to awaken to that, and to maybe get curious about the breath, because what we've taken for granted our whole lives is actually the finest connection we have to all that is holy. So may we awaken to that. And in whatever way that comes, may we awaken to that.
And then what would you say, for example, for those that don't know you, what would you say your current impact reach is, or the community size, or number of people that you've been working with?
Well, I think we've probably, as a school, because I have a school, an academy that trains people to do this work. So, and we've got about 1,000 of us around the world now. I think we're in almost every country in the world. And
teachers,
teaching,
practitioners,
facilitators. I call them facilitators because they're helping other people on their journey. And some of them have up to 1,000 people in a session. Some of them have one. So there's a huge variation. But we're in several million now that have had the experience of alchemy of breath, or of the alchemy that's in the breath.
Right.
And and those are the closest to us that we communicate with in our community. We're probably about 155,000 or something like that.
Okay, that's impressive.
To give some kind of context.
How do people find you? What's the best way to find you and find out more about what you're doing and what you're currently offering?
At alchemyofbreath.com. And again, like I said, it's not really about the breath, it's what we do with it. So the way we use the breath at Alchemy is to help people negotiate this distance between the psychological realms and the spiritual realms, the emotional realms, the things that we don't understand, and the times we get overwhelmed and the times we undermine ourselves, and we get to drop those chains and to use the breath in order to inform us of a different way of living and a different way of being. And it can happen in 30 minutes.
Right.
So
you've got some free courses and sessions you do online.
We have free sessions every Sunday online.
You do weekly services on Sundays.
We have a weekly Sunday service. It's 9:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. English, UK time.
GMT.
So it's to cover both Australia and it's called Breathe the World.
Right. And then you've got some evergreen experiences on there, and you've got courses that you offer.
Yeah, we've got courses.
And you've got in-person experiences also.
In-person experiences. We've got courses. We've got courses for common issues like depression or anxiety or some of those unfortunate things that we carry with us. And
you do also some breath camps in Italy. You've got some property in
Italy. That's where we congregate. Yeah,
Right.
We have our land-based school is in Tuscany. And all summer long we run retreats.
What would people have to think of in terms of how would someone make that work in their schedule to come out? Can anybody come, or do you need to already be like a practitioner?
No, anybody can come. It's a 10-day experience.
10 day.
And it's like rewriting your life.
And so for everybody listening, it's really not about the tea. because actually, the experiences I had on the tea were just experiences I have anyway. It was just, and even the few sessions I've done of breath work with you, it's like the same.
Well, I've worked with the Psychedelic Society for now 9 years, and most of the work I do with them is to help people come down, to help people, which is what was so important to me from my experience with you, to help people. How do you integrate this downflow, this tsunami of data? How do you bring it into this life? And that is what I say with breathwork too. It's not the event. It's not the breathwork journey that you make. It's like, how are you going to make it real? It's like in the hero's journey, you don't just sit on Treasure Island looking at the gold. You need to bring it back to Bond Street to spend it. You've got to in some way bring this treasure back to the world and see what changes can happen.
Don't hold your breath. I was just trying to think of your final tagline to speak to those people that irritate you when they say, "Oh, Anthony, I guess it's time to breathe." The end of your talk can be, "Okay, guys."
It's like, let's have a word about that.
Yeah.
Just give me 5 hours. Let's see if we can open that one up.
So I can never look. You're my dad, and just for the audience, I can never catch up with. Honestly, I can never confidently
you can't catch up with me because
say
you're on
where
a plane.
you live.
You're going.
I don't know where you live.
I think you travel more than I do. But this is my travel season, and it all comes to rest in May through October. We're at Asha in Italy. That's asha.global for those who want to find out about it.
How do you spell Asha?
ASHA. Think Alchemy School of Healing Arts.
Wait, what? Oh, Alchemy School of Healing Arts.
Asha.global.
Yeah. And alchemyofbreath.com.
That's right. Asha in Sanskrit means hope. So
hope.
We breathe in hope.
Beautiful. And then in the world you've spoken about a sense of hope, of change. But most people probably spend the majority of their incoming data time as sort of bad news, right? Wars, disasters, challenges, problems, divisions, fights. In a world such as that, in a world such as this, and also in respect to how it might show up in your world more personally, locally, globally, beyond breath, how do you find peace? Starts with you.
Really through self-forgiveness. And learning to love all those conditions that are me. Then I can be an unconditional love of who I am.
Beautiful.
And I've had a lot of conditions to forgive and a lot of conditions to learn to love. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. And that's how it starts inside me.
That's beautiful. And I think that's your brand, not breath. I think breath is the how.
Exactly.
But that's the why.
Yeah.
I think ever since Give Me My Brother Back, that's the little Anthony that's been,
He's still at work.
God bless you.
Yeah, and I actually left him behind. He's in my bedroom down the corridor. My little teddy bear that I usually bring with me.
Dad has a little teddy bear that you guys, so cute. I've never seen that guy before. I was literally thinking that day, I think I should have a teddy bear.
I think we all need a teddy bear.
We all need a teddy bear. Yeah, I'm proud of you, Dad.
Thank you. I'm proud of you too. I'm proud for you. And I really feel a beautiful alliance and commitment and care for this place that we've had to navigate some distance to be able to sit in this room together in this moment. And doesn't matter how far apart we may feel from that which is our highest iteration, but it's possible. I think this proves it. It's a beautiful story. So thank you.
Thank you.
Peace Starts With Me podcast is produced and directed by A. Curtis Farrow. Assistant producer, Koichi Nakai. Associate producers, Albin Gaval, Ron Lucas, Terry Gadsden, and William Lagrateria. Editor, Albin Gaval. Audio engineer, Oji Bahian. Media director, Robert W. Alexander of 360 Wise Media. And PR and branding by Irving Street Rep.